Christensen. Today, we will be learning about thermal pollution and its causes, effects, and solutions. "75 to 82% of thermal pollution comes from power plants. Thermal pollution occurs when water from lakes, rivers, or oceans is used to cool the power plant. It is then released back into the same rivers, lakes, or oceans at a higher temperature. Thermal pollution can also occur when dams release water. The water is released from the bottom of the lake, which is always going to be colder than the top of the lake. Therefore, the river downstream from the dam will be at a much colder temperature than it was before. The diagram on the left shows a coal-powered power plant. As you can see, the water is pulled from the river, sent through the power plant to cool it off, and is then sent back into the same river. On the right, you have a nuclear power plant. The same system is used as the cool water source. Water is pulled through to cool off the turbine and condenser, and then is sent back into the cool water source. Here are some examples of the effects of thermal pollution through a thermal imaging camera. As you can see, the warm water is released back into the cooler water, which spreads it out and warms up the ecosystem. So, some major problems from thermal pollution is rapidly changing water temperatures affects marine life in many ways. The metabolism of marine life changes slowly with the seasons. The metabolism gets faster in the summer and slows down in the winter. The heated water artificially forces the metabolism to get faster, which causes the marine life to die due to lack of food. Algal blooms also block plants on the bottom of the water from sunlight, leading to a lower oxygen content, which suffocates marine life. It also pushes life out of their range of tolerance, which forces them to migrate to a place where they can survive. As a result of this, there is less biodiversity. Here is an example of a fish who was suffocated due to an algal bloom. Some controversies over thermal pollution is the government is always deadlocked over regulations. The Republicans and the power companies are against regulation, which would help improve our economy, but cutting regulations allows companies to do things such as thermal pollution. Democrats advocate for regulating industries to stop companies from taking advantage of the environment, which reduces things such as thermal pollution. The debate over improving the economy versus improving the environment stops progress in its tracks. There are many solutions to reduce thermal pollution which do not require government action. Recycling used water would make a huge impact in reducing thermal pollution. If power plants and manufacturers recycled their used cooling water, it would not be expelled back into the environment. They could use cooling towers to cool off the heated water after it has been sent through the power plant. The cooled water could then be put back through the power plant and then cooled off again by the cooling towers. However, this solution is very expensive. Educating the public through PSAs, advertisements, or speeches could put public pressure on companies to change their water use policies. Another solution is to reuse the heated water by sending it to nearby towns, cities, homes, and businesses. They can use the heated water to improve their daily life or their business. This would also be quite expensive. However, companies could charge fees for the use of their wastewater. There are so many smart minds in the world, the solutions to thermal pollution are almost endless. So some laws surrounding thermal pollution is the Clean Water Act, which requires the EPA to make sure cooling water intakes, which is where the cold water is brought into the power plant, the cool water intakes must be built with the least possible impact on the environment. It also requires large power plants, which use more than 50 million gallons of cooling water a day. Those large power plants must convert their wastewater into steam to create more electricity. The EPA attempted to pass another law regulating cooling water intakes even further. However, the costs were too high and companies pushed back, stating that they would lose 33 to 36 gigawatts of power due to the extra costs of improving the water intakes. The bill did not pass, and no other attempts to regulate thermal pollution have been made by the government since. A case study regarding thermal pollution surrounds the Rhine River. This river flows through Western Europe in Switzerland, France, and Germany. The Rhine River has recently been discovered to be the most thermally polluted river in the world. While the Mississippi River receives the most amount of heat emissions in the world, the Rhine River is the most affected by the heat emissions. The Rhine River receives most of its heat emissions from nuclear power plants and coal-powered plants. 1/3 of the total water flow of the Rhine River sees an increase of 5 degrees Celsius throughout the year due to the heat emissions from power plants. Salmon species are the most affected by temperature increases in European rivers. An increase in just 1.5 degrees Celsius is enough to negatively affect these fish. In the late 1800s, the Rhine River had an abundance of salmon species, the most in all of Europe. 250,000 salmon were caught each year. By the 1950s, pollution of the river from industry, overfishing, and dams were detrimental to the population of salmon. While the river has been cleaned up since the 1990s and the salmon population has just about recovered, studies show that this increase in 5 degrees Celsius from thermal pollution is stressing the salmon population and could lead to another mass death. Some possible exam questions include, how does thermal pollution cause a lack of oxygen in the water? Answer A, higher water temperatures have less oxygen, is not true because that's just not true. B, lower water temperatures have less oxygen. That is also untrue. Answer C, algal blooms block sunlight, which slows photosynthesis. This is the correct answer because the algae on the top of the water blocks the sunlight from getting to the plants on the bottom, which prevents them from conducting photosynthesis, which greatly reduces oxygen levels at the bottom of lakes and rivers. Another question, which river is the most thermally polluted in the world? Answer choice A is correct, the Rhine River. While the Mississippi River has the most heat emissions put into it, the Rhine River has the highest temperature increase due to thermal pollution. In conclusion, thermal pollution is widely unknown and ignored by the government and society. It is caused by power plants cooling their equipment with water from rivers, lakes, and oceans, and then expelling the waste heated water back into the rivers and lakes and oceans. This raises the temperature of these bodies of water, which hurts the ecosystem. The government is always deadlocked over environmental regulations, which makes stopping thermal pollution a challenge. The Clean Water Act is the only regulation surrounding thermal pollution and requires large power plants to turn wastewater into steam to create more electricity. The solutions to thermal pollution are almost endless. However, most are very expensive, and companies push back against these solutions due to the extra cost. An example of the impact of thermal pollution is the Rhine River. It is the most thermally polluted river in the world, with an increase of 5 degrees Celsius over the course of the year. This increase in temperature is detrimental to the salmon population and could lead to a mass death. Thank you for listening to this lesson on thermal pollution. Watch out for exam questions on this topic. Remember to make a positive impact at any time possible.